Well, it's very quiet, so probably now would be a great time to start this. Welcome, first off, welcome to our seminar. We try to get these every month, so this is our probably our third one. This is our third one this so far. So we plan on having about 3 or 4 more in the coming quarter. But it's our pleasure to have 3 speakers here today. This is a great opportunity. I'd like to introduce them and kind of give a short bio. So over here is Ruchi Shewaramani, and I'm going to brag on them a little bit because they might not brag a little bit because they do have a lot of accomplishments, and so I do want to just highlight a few. But Ruchi is a cybersecurity executive with over 15 years of experience in information technology security, identity and access management, governance, risk and compliance across a lot of disciplines such as healthcare, education, and financial. She has a master's of software engineering. So do I from Seattle University. Okay, that's cool. In the last decade, she has managed the security program for various health and human services agency in DC and Washington State area, and she successfully created numerous federal audits. She specializes in leading healthcare agencies to secure their data, be compliant with state and federal partners, and provides digital trust to the citizens they serve. And she's currently serving as the Chief Information Security Officer for WA Health Benefit Exchange, and as a board member also for ISACA Greater Washington DC chapter. And in the middle here is Jenny Stuart, and she oversees Construx. Construx is like the top company. We have a lot of alumni there, and so she's does Construx consulting services, and they again focus on proven software development best practices. They have tons of books that I know that I use for classes. And she has over 20 years experience in process improvement, software testing, quality assurance techniques. Her expertise in incorporating software development best practices. She's helped numerous companies dramatically improve their software development and quality assurance processes. And she does a lot of classes and white papers and a lot of client studies. And she has a BSE from the University of Washington. She's a member of the Computer Society, the IEEE. And this is a really unique accomplishment, but in year 2000, she earned the highest score in the whole United States on QAI certified software testing. And so she's very accomplished, and we're glad to have her. And then lastly,
and also means I'm old.
You guys are very young compared to me, believe me. Don't worry about that. And over here is Beatrice. Beatrice is actually she's one of our professors here now, but she's had a 17-year tech industry veteran. She's been in the tech for 17 years, and she's had various software engineering, product management, and engineering management roles at Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta, Facebook. She's mostly interested in machine learning and its applications. She's worked on web search, robotics, augmented reality, speech, language, and video understanding. She's, again, as I said, she's on our she's one of our professors here at Seattle University. So thank you. So if we can give them a show. We have the interesting way we're doing it today, and I think it's going to be highly engaging for all of you. But we're first going to have them actually talk a little bit about their professional trajectories. And it should relate nicely to a lot of you that are starting your trajectories in computer science. So we will just start with Ruchi first, and then as you finish, then the rest of you can go in order. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll get started. And like you said, I'm currently the Chief Information Security Officer for Washington's Health Benefit Exchange. It's the state-based marketplace where the Washingtonians go to buy their health insurance. In case you all did not know, it's the local enrollment. You can go. I'm also the board member for the nonprofit ISACA. In case you're looking at cybersecurity certifications, that is the organization you will be looking at. And I'm the board member I'm the director for academics. So working with students is my passion up here, and I do similar things in the DMV area. When I talk about my career trajectory, I want to talk about how I got into this profession and how I survived the recession. I think those are 2 key takeaways I would like to share. The cybersecurity is picking up now or in the most recent years, but when I graduated with a master's in software engineering in 2007, that was not the most sought out profession or even something that most of the students were considering. And there were not that many job opportunities out there. So it's interesting how I got there. When I was a student and I was getting my master's in software engineering, I knew I did not want to do coding. I knew I kind of did not even want to do testing. I already had a bachelor's in engineering. I'm on the way to doing IT development, which is not what I wanted to do. So I took a lot of courses to figure out. I wanted to be in IT, but I couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to do in IT. So I took all kinds of courses. I took usability. I even went to the Albert School of Business and did some team management and leadership courses to see if I wanted to do project management in IT. And then I found this course that was taught by Dr. Roshandel, and I know she's very renowned in the university. She was teaching this new book called Building Security in the Software Development Life Cycle. And I was like, okay, let me try this. So I'm so glad I took that course because here I am 17 years later at the top of what that cybersecurity career brings. So in case you all are confused about what to do, look at the new courses that are offered and try them. There might be the Kool-Aid to drink for the rest of your profession like I did. And also, like I said, there were not that many jobs out there. There was not that much talent out there that was doing cybersecurity, and which is still the case 17 years later. Dr. Roshanat actually got a call from the founder of the company who had also written the book that we studied in class. And they asked who is, I guess you're somewhat of a student, and she recommended me. And it was series of interviews. I landed in New York for my first interview. And there was no looking back after. I pursued cybersecurity. I got my first job as a pen tester in Morgan Stanley. In Manhattan, it was dream come true. 6 months into living the dream, the financial sector. It was as high my pay had gotten, it was like nosedive. If you all remember, probably not. You were still in school. Nobody had a job in New York City. If you were the entry level, you did not have a job. If you were at the C level, you did not have a job. And we also being a student, like an international student, my time to work on my OPT was running out when I lost my job due to recession. And I was in the market like, okay, I need somebody to sponsor my visa. I need a job and nobody's offering a job. This is something that you all might face given the recent layoffs in the industry. So I want to share this with you. I was flexible with what I would have taken. At the same time, I knew I wouldn't go become a painter, right? So I started doing pen testing, and then I found identity access management is another, was back in the day, an upcoming field in cybersecurity. Again, new, I guess I've always picked up the new thing and that interested me. So I got my job doing identity access management, completely new. I had never studied it. I did not know, but I was willing to accept the challenge. I was flexible, but in the domain of cybersecurity because I knew that was what was my calling. So I got that job, became a consultant, and got so much experience because of the choice I made. I consulted for K-12 institutions. I consulted for universities. I consulted for pharmaceuticals. It just completely, instead of it being a minus in my career, the recession added so much to my career in terms of the clientele, in terms of adding on to my cybersecurity experience. So that was me surviving the recession, and I also got sponsorship. Now I have my green card. So when I look back, I'm like, you can survive a recession, have a game plan, know where you're flexible, and know where you're not going to completely turn into a painter unless that's your calling. For me, it was to remain in cybersecurity. fast forward, I was in DC in 2013 when Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act was launched. And DC was building the exchange. It was again something that people had never done. So my previous boss invited me, like, can you come help us do what you do? And I became part of the exchange in 2013. We were one of the first exchanges that went live on time, stayed up. A lot of states were crashing. By the way, I think 9 years later, I'm back to the exchange, but with the state of Washington. And since then, I think I found my true calling. It was cybersecurity, and then doing it not for a financial burden or another like pharmaceutical Fortune 100. It was mission-driven cybersecurity is to work with health and human services agencies and really help them secure their citizens' data so they can shop whatever they're shopping or getting a government assistance with health and human services program and establish the digital trust that we are keeping their information secure. So that's in a nutshell my journey. And I already talked about me being academics connected. This is the other hard reality. So many years later, that there's still not that much talent that is coming out of the universities in terms of cybersecurity. There are hundreds of thousands of job openings for cybersecurity, contrary to when I graduated. And then again, I think towards the end, we'll also talk about what different career options you have. And I'll share different career options with cybersecurity. With that, on to Jenny.
Thank you. So I think that's very cool that you were able to find where you wanted to focus your career fairly early on.
Yeah.
Through some exploration when you were in school. My experience is completely different. I think of it as like a series of happy accidents. Where I've really kind of changed what I've done a lot over the course, well, not for maybe the last 10 or 15 years now, but so I started my very first kind of tech work I ever did was an internship when I was in school. I went out to North Carolina and worked for IBM for a little while, for 6 months. I think those are fantastic opportunities to get your feet into the world, to try out some careers, to see what kinds of things you're interested in, to put something interesting on your resume too, to make you really attractive as you look at opportunities when you graduate from school. I started there and I was really open to whatever they wanted. I ended up testing. And after 6 months of doing that, I was like, wait, you pay me to break things? I like this job. So when I graduated, I interviewed with a lot of places. I ended up working as a tester for Intel. And, 2 or 3 or 4 years later, I started thinking, why do I keep finding all these things? They're super obvious. This should be harder. And then I started working my way out of the testing part of the life cycle into more of the quality aspects of the life cycle, thinking about how do we make changes in how we understand our requirements, how we write our code, how we do our unit testing to make that job that I had harder, right? I always used to say, make it hard for me to find issues and problems. How's that? Awesome. So I'm being inside of a company like Intel has a lot of perks in that it's a big organization. There are lots of opportunities. There was actually an organization about quality inside of the industry, inside the company. And so I was able to work with them to start applying some of the techniques and practices that they knew of on the projects I was working on. So I was kind of stealthily moving into a slightly different position. The world happens. It was Christmas, like, I don't know, 2 days after Christmas or a couple days before New Year's. And the guy I was dating at the time said, don't you work on this product? And I said, yes. And he said, well, Intel just sold it. And I happened to go through a pretty major transition out of Intel into, gosh, I can't remember what they were called anymore, into this other company. And then about that was over about a 9-month period, and then 3 to 6 months later, that company laid us all off. So expect some bumps along the way. Stuff just happens sometimes. I was lucky in that when that happened to me, it was the height of the .com era. And so trying to get a job at that point, it's like taking candy from a baby. I mean, I had a company that actually sent me flowers after an interview. So I ended up working, this is when I found Steve McConnell. I started just basically casting my net incredibly widely, both applying for places, but also reaching out to my friends. So at that time, I had a bunch of friends in the industry sort of say, hey, do you know any really cool companies? I would think I would rather not work for another giant, large company anymore. And somebody sent me Steve McConnell's company, author of Code Complete, rapid development, and I went, he's hiring people? So I ended up there. Initially, this was many moons ago, we used to build custom software. So I came in that director of quality role that I had kind of started to work my way inside of in Intel. That was kind of what I wanted to do next. And then over time, Construx had a huge arm doing training and consulting. So going in and doing assessments, giving people requirements training, Kanban training, Scrum training, estimation, project management. And I really started moving into the consulting world and was there for probably 10 years solely inside of Construx. And every once in a while, our CEO would say to me, "Do you want to train?" And I said, no, I don't like to speak in front of people. That would be super uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. 10 years later, I finally said, okay, fine, I'll try it. What's the worst thing that can possibly happen? So the other thing I'd say is sometimes life just hands you an opportunity. And even if it seems like it might be a little bit of a stretch, or might be outside of your comfort zone, or maybe might not be what you want to do, maybe give it a whirl. Because training's now become my absolute favorite thing to do. I just love it. I love being with the group, and I especially love being able to do training and then sit down with intact teams and say, okay, we talked about that over the last 2 days. Now let's make it work for your team right now and get in there and really do hands-on coaching. And then when I leave, I feel like I've made a difference. And I think to Ruchi's point, one of the things to look for over time is what gives you energy? Where do you take passion from? What interests you? Find those things and then focus in on maybe a planned journey with someone else. Maybe a totally, you'll just kind of see what happens to you as you go journey. But I think you'll know a lot, right? We know when something drains us. We know when something gives us energy. And if you can find a curve where you get energy from what you're doing, that just makes for a much more robust, rich, and round life. All right. I will pass the mic.
We're doing this often when teaching in this room. There we go. Hi. So my name is Beatrice again, and yeah, my journey was a little different, but I think everybody's journey in this field is a little different. I teach here at Seattle U. I see some of my students, and this is a new profession for me. Before Seattle U, I was in the tech industry for 17 years for my bio. I count each and every one of them. But before then, I also like to start telling why I got into computer science. And because again, for me, it has been important to follow that passion through my life and in my work. And that's what has kept me alive and involved and happy. And it all started with my parents. I have a father that's an engineer and a mom that's a mathematician. So the apple didn't fall far from the tree. I wanted to do STEM from the get-go. I just wasn't sure which branch. Chemistry was in the play for a little bit, and then I realized, no, I really enjoy math. I wanted to go pure math, but I was born and raised in Mexico, and in Mexico, your opportunities as a math major at the time weren't as well compensated as the computer science or software engineering role. So thankfully, I bumped into friends that were thinking of computer science or were already enrolled in a computer science degree, and I could ask them questions about what it is that you do. And I had, again, fortunately, been exposed to programming from an early age, thanks to my dad's interest in computers. So a lot of the barriers that I do think diverse folks like me usually have, I was lucky that those were not part of my upbringing. I always grew up thinking, yeah, I can do math. My mom's a mathematician. And it was a huge culture shock for me when I came to the US for grad school and realized that, oh, Americans don't think women are good at math? What? What? Why? And I think, you know, it's a generalization, but I think the belief is still out there, the wrong belief. And so I didn't have that barrier. I had access to learning programming from an early age, so I wasn't afraid of code, and I thought it was pretty cool. It was a cool way of solving puzzles, which is really what gets me going. I am teaching data structures, and it's one of my favorite classes because there's a lot of puzzles to solve with different algorithms, and it is just a fun class for me, at least. I hope for my students as well. And that's how I ended up in computer science. And one thing led to another, and I even enrolled in grad school here in the US, and that's how my life began in this country. And I was very lucky that, again, because this is such a high demand profession, and at the time there was a lot of hiring happening, I was able to get a job at Microsoft. I came and I was studying in Virginia, and I came to interview in Redmond, just around the corner. And I did not get an offer on my first try. And I love telling this story because I do think that this is also something that might happen to you. Don't stop trying, even with the same company. Sometimes something didn't go so well that day. It could be you, it could be the interviewers, it could be the weather, it could be so many things, right? Maybe you're feeling sick that day, but keep trying. I was, again, fortunate that my recruiter saw that I was really close to making it, and they decided on their own to line me up another interview 2 weeks later. So I came back to Redmond again on the red eye and interviewed again. And the second time was the charm. And I got my first full-time job as a software engineer in Microsoft, which for me at the moment was like, wow, that's the dream, right? If you're in aerospace, you want to work for Boeing, now SpaceX maybe. If you're in computer science at the time, I thought Microsoft was it. So I had a lovely career in Microsoft. I started as a software developer in test, back when that existed. I don't think they exist anymore, for good reasons. Not because we don't need testers, but because we need the developers to do their own testing. So it's really, when you're a software developer or software engineer, you should be doing your own testing a lot. And anyhow, that's another, that's a whole other topic. And then I experienced many different teams and many different roles, and mainly because I was always chasing things that I enjoyed. I started in a team called Passport, which was really about authentication. So when you have a Microsoft ID, that was the team that handled all the safety and security and signups and making sure that you could log in to your Xbox, as well as your Windows laptop, as well as your Windows mobile phone, right? We remember those, maybe? Yeah, I think my husband had the last one of those. He loved them. And they were great devices and really good UI, but we made some mistakes. And so from there, I knew that I wanted to do some machine learning. My grad school, I tried to shape my graduate degree towards computer vision, and I wanted to learn more and do more in that area. It was not quite what I found. The search team at the time, which is now Bing, but back in the day it was Amazon Search, was hiring, and I just saw a poster in the coffee area, right? And it's like, oh, we're hiring for the software developer positions, and I'm like, well, I've been here for only a year and a half, but maybe I can interview for this team. I have nothing to lose. So I went ahead and interviewed again, and they gave me an offer, and I switched teams, and I got to work on a team that, well, I guess our goal was to eliminate spam from web search results. So that our people searching for whatever information, we're getting legitimate sources rather than some site trying to sell them pharmaceuticals or whatever scam of the day. That got me interested in a part of our field that has to do with fighting people that are very motivated to make money through scams, and they will go very lengthy ways, both social engineering as well as computer engineering, to get past and to get your money. And this is actually how I ended up getting a job many years later at Facebook, where I worked in the business integrity team, whose main goal is to prevent bad advertisers from scamming people through all the platforms that Facebook owns: Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. So it's funny how my career kind of had bookends, in which I worked in that space at the beginning and at the end in my last team before I came here to Seattle U. So very similar, I think. You never know. Just keep your mind open, and if something is interesting to you, thankfully in computer science we can help solve problems from every single field, and you can jump around and learn and find your niche and find your passion. And when you get bored, if that happens, there's always something else that you can try. And so in Microsoft, I also moved from search to graphics for a while. We were doing visualization of very large imagery. So think virtual Earth, so actual like Google Earth as well, maps, but also gigapixel images and reconstruction of 2D photographs into 3D worlds with something called photosynth, and cool things that never saw the light of day very publicly, because Microsoft invests in a lot of projects that get canceled, and that's super cool because you still get to work on very interesting things, but you don't get to worry about whether they're actually making money or not. That said, it is good advice though, if you really care about your career and want to make sure that you're advancing in the most optimum path, then you probably do want to work for a product that is making the company a lot of money, and that then you'll have more stability. I did not. I cared more about working on things that I was interested in, and so I did get the morning email that would tell me that my team was canceled and that our project was no longer around. And that can go either way. In some companies, they're very kind, they're big enough to say, hey, you have 2 months to find another team. Don't worry, we got you. And then I would just go and find another team. But once when I was working in a robotics project, also very experimental, I actually got the pig slip, right? I actually got fired. I did end up finding another job with Microsoft, but it happens. And these bumps are to be expected. Change is the only constant. So it is okay to take some time and regroup and feel it, because of course, I personally would fall in love with my projects and really enjoy the family of engineers I was working with. So it is sad to have to make that transition, but there's always something on the other side. So yeah, Microsoft was a great experience for me. It's like another university where you just learn so much all the time, being next to extremely smart individuals, and just pretty much being able to work on almost anything you can dream of. But I did end up leaving at some point after working in conversational understanding, where my team built speech and language understanding models to build the first assistant in Microsoft called Cortana. She is no longer with us, but I was there for her birth. And yeah, she looked a lot like Alexa. The ring is like the same. This is my Alexa lanyard from when I worked at Amazon. So yeah, I decided it was a good time for me to try something small. In Seattle, things have changed a lot. It was not just Microsoft and Amazon. There were a lot of startups starting to hold offices here. So I decided it was a good time after 11 years how about trying a startup and a different tech stack and just have some fun? And I was lucky to find a small company. Again, it was really just networking, asking friends, tell me about where you're at, and noticing that somebody was talking about, hey, we're opening a new office in Seattle. You'll be person number 4. That's super cool. When I worked in a company with tens of thousands of people before, so I tried that for a couple of years. It was an amazing experience. I got to learn Python and all kinds of new technology that we wouldn't use it inside Microsoft, which was great. And a lot of cool aspects about working in a smaller company is that you can wear multiple hats. Your life is less specialized, and I enjoy that very much. I really like flexing and just rolling on my sleeves. And if what we needed was supporting our customer support folks, or if we needed to do an actual visit with a customer and represent, that was completely new. I had to buy dress clothes for that event. It was also post baby, so I needed new dress. And it was great. It was a beautiful experience, and I did start that office here, and we tripled it in size from 4 to 12. Here in Seattle, working out of the WeWork. Eventually I left because I met a lot of my ex-colleagues from Amazon that were working from Microsoft that were now working in Alexa, and wanted to finish what we started. And so I decided, all right, let's try this out. I love assistance. I love language understanding and dialogue systems. But I didn't love the Amazon culture that much. And that's not everyone, and that's not every team. That was just me. I don't want to speak badly, because it is a great company and I met some amazing people there that are still my friends. But I ended up not spending a lot of time there. And that's another thing. Once you try new things, if they're not your cup of tea, make an effort to get yourself out of there. I have friends that have stayed too long in places, and life is too short. So again, we work in a field that's ever changing, ever moving, and it's not hard to find a new opportunity. So I just started looking around, found where people were happy, and that's how I found my way to Facebook, which is totally not a place I thought I would work at ever. But I realized they did have teams working on on removing the bad stuff from Facebook. Those we call the integrity teams, we used to call them. And here in Seattle, there was a very strong presence of both community integrity as well as business integrity. So I was able to join one such team and try hard to remove that bad content using machine learning techniques, which have success, not all of the time. And that was also just a very different culture, fast moving, more inclusive, I think, than previous companies I worked at, and also a place where I have a lot of accelerated growth. So I enjoyed my time there, but I also realized that I needed a break after a few years. And during my break, I ran into another friend, Professor Koenig, who I used to have as a colleague back in Microsoft days. And he teaches here in Seattle, and he told me about the wonderful time he was having teaching here. And I decided that was something I really wanted to try. And so here I am, a few years later, really enjoying it. I don't know if I will ever go back to industry, maybe, but right now I really, really love teaching. And diversity and inclusion in computer science is very important to me. And I feel that we can do a lot of good work. Now earlier, and even earlier in the pipeline, and not only represent but be there for students that are like teetering because they're not getting the support, because they're not seeing themselves represented. I hope I can help with that. Do we have questions?
So for the next part of our seminar series is our panel discussion. So our speakers will kind of take turns and also chime in. We have a couple questions, but they're all geared to the theme of better together, diversity and inclusivity and software engineering communities. So dive in. The first question I have is, what are the professional challenges that you face and how do you deal with them? Jenny, do you want to start us off?
Oh, professional challenges and facing them. Well, I think I'd like to start even before professional challenges. And everybody in this room, I think, is past this point, but I think even early in school, I remember having that experience of, what do you need like math and science? That's not what girls should be focused on. And I do think through our lives, often we need to just believe in ourselves, right? If you know you're good at this, if you demonstrate that you're good at it, don't let anybody else tell you you're not good at it. I was sitting with my advisor my freshman year in university, talking about the fact I wanted to get an electrical engineering degree. And they said, you're not gonna be able to do that. And I basically just kind of flipped the bozo bit on them at that point and said, yes, I can. I'm not gonna listen to you. I know I'm good at math. I know I'm good at science. So there will be times, I think, for your whole life that you'll just need to rely a little bit on your faith in yourself. I know I'm good and I can continue along this pathway because it interests me. I'm passionate about it. I was way more interested in that than, some of the softer things that I was expected to like. And so I let that lead me into an electrical engineering degree and then into my career path. And I started work when there really wasn't much diversity at all, anywhere. I remember being in school, looking around, and I'm not just the only woman. I'm the only white woman. There's nobody else. There's nobody of color. There's nobody in this room except me and a bunch of white guys. So I think also sometimes you just need to. There may be a few bumps along the way. I remember my first job when I worked for Intel. Down the hallway was a guy talking about me and the other woman that had just been hired, and that we were just diversity hires. And I just kind of rolled my chair out of my office and said, I can hear you, and rolled my chair back into my office. And he never said another comment in earshot of me ever again. Right. So I wanted to kind of make a point, but without being rude or obnoxious. And I think that kind of thing happened along the way, right? And one of the things I just learned was sometimes to just let water roll off my back, right? Okay, you think that, but my manager loves me. And I've been here for a year and change and got a mid-year promotion, which at Intel at that time was incredibly uncommon to get a promotion and a raise in the half-year review period, right? So I know I'm okay. I don't care what you think. You're just not important. I'm not going to base myself worth on what you think of me. I'm going to base myself worth on what I think of me and the people that I am directly interacting and reporting with. I also think one of the phrases I've spent my whole life living by is a bad boss can't, or a good boss can't guarantee a good job, but a bad boss can guarantee a bad job. And when I was interviewing, a long time ago, acknowledge the way that I thought about interviewing was, I am interviewing you just as much as you were interviewing me. Right? You were seeing if I'm a good fit. I'm also seeing if you're a good fit. So, just watch for how things happen in things like interviews, how the company talks, how they talk about themselves, how they even interview you. I had an interview years ago in the .com era, and I'm sitting in a conference room and a person walks in, then another person walks in, and another person walks in, and all of a sudden there's 7 people around the table. And I jokingly halfway crawled under the desk and said, oh my goodness. And we all laughed and we had a great time. And that was part of me kind of going, oh, I think I'm going to like this culture, right? There's playfulness here. I value that. So I think testing the waters too, as we go with things like your managers, see if you're going to have really good interactions, because especially my first few jobs, having a manager who was incredibly supportive of me, was really helpful in making the transition from school into the working environment, getting my feet underneath me, getting comfortable that I was going to be okay in this career, establishing a track record of having a couple of positions, having a resume, feeling like, okay, and now I'm here, right? Now you start to know people, right? You can network with people. You can use that network that you've started to build as things happen, like, oops, I have a pig slip. Oh, the economy just crashed. And they will happen. I guarantee you they're gonna happen.
Talking about challenges. The challenges I face are not going to be unique to what I face. This is what you all will face when you come out too. So going in line with the topic that we have better together, right? Here I am, a woman, an international student of color in IT. That itself is like, what is the percentage of people like me when I go into meetings even today, right? And expressing that and taking a caveat from that, we think once we get a STEM degree, I got my bachelor's degree of engineering. I'm smart, I'm an engineer. It's not what you received as when you go into those meeting rooms or a male-dominated event, whether it's a classroom or a meeting room or a conference, call it be. Then you get a master's in software engineering. I'm like, by now I'm double smart. Does that change anything on the ground? Not really. Okay, I'm an analyst. Maybe that's why I'm not the first person they want to listen to. It's another guy or somebody else, but not me. And I'm like, is it because I'm a girl? Is it because I'm proud? Is it because I'm a consultant? Is it because I'm on H1B? It creates this cloud of self-doubt and it doesn't go away. And I'm like, okay, maybe when I'm the boss, when I'm the manager, or maybe when I'm in the C-level role. And now I am in the C-level role. So what happens? All the men turn to me for advice gently? No. And I sit in rooms with other C-level faculty, like not faculty, C-suite, who are women and also of color. And it's like we both are talking. Are we the first ones that are being heard? No. So where I'm trying to go is that we are in a state in society where all of this exists. It's not going to go away. But we, or when you come out as student, do not take that long as I did in getting another degree and getting another promotion and finally being the boss to say, you know what, it's not me. That self-doubt, please just check it out when you leave your house every day, because nobody else will do it for you. It's, if nobody is listening to you, just be a little louder. If you're full of self-doubt, be a little stronger, because you have what you need to be successful. Don't let this be a challenge for you, because it's very much out there. You will not be the first person being heard. And I say that to my fellow women student community. And what I would say to the fellow guys sitting here is, when you see the girl who's in the same analyst role as you not being heard, be the one who says, you know what, I think she had something to say. How did I be so successful? I had a boss who made me try, who always made sure, I think Ruchi has an important point. I think she always has important points. And at that time, I think I did need somebody to give me the opportunity. Now, years later, I will create that opportunity for myself. So help yourself along the way and help your co-workers, your students, help others along the way. That's, I think, one of the challenge. But again, when you go out in the real world, that's not going to be the only challenge. Like we heard, change is the constant. I also had the fortune of working in DC the last 10 years. I think everything you see in TV about the politics in DC, in the soap opera, is so real. I would come home and I'm like, this is House of Cards. My house, like my office is exactly House of Cards. Whatever you are seeing in TV, this is my office. This is what we live through every day. So the politics, the gender bias, the age bias, all, it's like bias, all of the above. I worked in an environment which was a cocktail of bad liquor. Like I've seen it all. Is it easy? No. But you just have to take a step back and realize that it's not you, it's them or it's the situation, and rise above it. Again, going back to my previous point, do not get caught up in the self-doubt or seeking validation from a degree or somebody else. That validation will either come too late or probably never come. So know your worth, and that's going to be your biggest asset in passing through any of the challenges you face in the society when you go to work, in your work culture, whether it's the biases, it's the recession, it's politics. Know your worth and steer your way. Yeah, sure.
And I think those are wise words, not just for your career.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I second absolutely everything that both Jenny and Ruchi mentioned. It is tough, and there is bias in the industry. And there are days where you will self-doubt, and there are days where you just remind yourself that you got what it takes to be there. You trust your skills, you know you're good. I always found that it was very quick whenever I joined a new team. I had to prove myself, and very quickly my immediate teammates and my manager would become my allies and my sponsors, and realize she works hard, she's smart, and we have fun together. Yay. And I really have preserved a lot of those working relationships through my history, which is again part of the networking part that has helped me in many situations. But the part that I did not enjoy is that noticing the difference of newcomers to a team when you are part of the underrepresented people, you have to prove yourself. If you're not, then people assume that you're good. And it is an extra battle that you have to face. And it's exhausting after many changes when you're like, well, I built up this amazing resume. I have all these credentials, all this credibility, but I still have to prove myself yet another time. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. But I'm still proud of turning people around when working with them. But unfortunately, especially in large organizations, when you do need to collaborate with other teams, other managers, other VPs, it becomes a constant thing to have to really stand up for yourself, show that you believe what you know is true in your interactions, in your work, and try to move quickly, because I'm here to work, not to have a psychological battle about gender bias. I want to solve problems. I want to help the world. And that's what I stick to. I hope that we are increasing the ranks of the underrepresented folks in STEM. That will help us change the culture from within. And that's also why teaching became such an important decision for me, because I'm hoping I can help on that side of the equation. Don't waste your time working for a manager that doesn't see you, that doesn't see your value. Don't waste your time. It's like a relationship. It is.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time. You need a manager that sees you and that will give you the opportunities, that will talk about your work in closed rooms. And unfortunately, at least in my experience, my world was divided between the managers that didn't see me and the managers that did. And interestingly enough, as I was thinking about this talk yesterday, I came to a new realization that the majority of those managers that did value my work appropriately, according to me, the majority were European descent. From European countries, where gender equality is a little bit further ahead than other parts of the world. I'm not saying only pick European managers, but I just realized that this morning, and I'm shocked still. I'm like, oh my goodness, But it does matter, that cultural background of the person does matter, and whether they can get past your skin color and your gender and your preferences, etc., that they can get past that and see your brain and see your soul and see your commitment. That is, look for those people. They will open doors for you and accelerate and support you. So that's my advice.
Thank you so much. It's great that you guys are already going on a lot into advice, because the next question is, what are the most important skills in the workplace? And also, how do you develop these skills? Just so you could start.
I can do a super brief because I feel like I talk too much. For me, technical skills continue to be the core. You have to know your stuff. You have to know your science. You have to understand how your code is working on the hood, how it's interacting with memory, all those things. I don't think they're theoretical. I don't think they're just for school. I think they make you a true technical person, and then anything you add on top of that can make you super successful. That's my point of view. Once you're like, yes, I understand deeply what's happening, adding communication, empathy, a growth mindset, oof, that will propel your career and make you different from everybody else you're with. And will open opportunities that you never thought were possible before. Even opportunities that may not be, hey, lead this technical project, but something like getting invited to give a talk to a 14,000 size audience with the chief software architect of Microsoft. I did that. And I flew in a jet with it. And it was the best day of my life. I'm sorry to my husband and child. But these opportunities happen when you have those extra soft skills to back up the technical aspects. That's my short answer.
And I would definitely concur with, the work that we do is not, I sit in a room, somebody slides a pizza under my door, I never interact with anybody, I write code all by myself. I can be a complete and not get along with anybody and be successful. Right? You need to know the technology. I do think the way I always thought about coming out of school was I have learned how to learn. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life continuing to learn. And so when I would go in and interview, it wasn't necessarily, yes, I check all those boxes of what you're looking for. It's, do I think this is interesting? Do I think I can learn it? Do I think I can be a very valuable member? And I think especially when you're entering your career, kind of positioning yourself and thinking about it as it's an opportunity to learn, right? I'm not going to show up with everything you want, but I can show up with a mindset of I'm interested. I want to know more. I think the things I always found most interesting were the ones where it was intriguing to me what was being done. The work that we were doing, the things we were doing, and the ones that were sort of like, yeah, okay, I might interview okay, but not great, were the things where I'm like, why are you doing this? How are you going to make money at this? I don't understand the business case of what you're working on here. This doesn't actually sound very, I actually turned a job down once when they offered it to me because I said, I just don't think I'm a good fit. This isn't interesting to me. And what I didn't say is, I also don't think you're going to make it through the .com bubble, which they did. So I think soft skills, I think an interest and a passionate interest. People will know if you're faking it, right? If you convey a sincere interest in the work that's being done, a sincere interest in learning how to learn, I think that can open a lot of doors very early in your career path. Right? At a certain point, you'll have kind of a track record of I've learned how to learn, and you can see it from everything I've done. Look at my resume. Skills that people are looking for. Well, I'm just going to do a little pitch because I'm from Construx and I can't let it go by without also doing a little pitch that not everybody's really as motivated by the technology, right? I think it's important. There are tons of people in the industry who are passionately motivated by the technology. I'm not. I never really have been. It's just not my thing. I was always much more interested in how do we go about the process of actually building things that are useful to our customers and provide value, right? I've ended up in things like thinking about lead software development and how do I optimize the value flow from concept to cash, right? I can get super geeky into all of these kinds of things. And there's room for people like me in the industry, right? So the other thing I would say is, yeah, you need enough technical chops to get along, right? I still can do I think you're lying to me. Or at least I think you're trying to pull the wool over my eyes because I just don't believe that you're saying it's impossible to do what I'm asking you to do. Technical decomposition of work for Scrum, for example, all the time, right? I need enough chops to know when I need to push teams further because I think they can do something. They just haven't figured out yet. I don't know the technology there anymore at all. I've been out of that for a long time. So, you know, if you're passionate about technology, awesome. If you're not, there's other things, right? There are other areas in the field, and I think starting to know that and starting to know the kinds of things that I do require I can work well with people. I'm a consultant, right? If people don't like me, they won't listen to me, they won't do anything about it. The client's gonna be unhappy. I'm not gonna get a good, I'm not gonna have a good time too, right? So some things I think you can be a little more. I'm pretty introverted, I'm really into the code, and some things are gonna require that you push your skill sets a little further in other areas or really flex into things that really aren't about the technology. They're about aspects of working with people and how to get that done well. Oh, can I add one more thing? Sure. Probably a seed to plant for later too is when you talk with people who aren't technologists, recognize you're talking Greek to them. And if you talk a lot of Greek to them, they'll just like completely tune out. So when you do start to interact with people who are in really other parts of the organizations that you're in, product managers, they speak a very different language. And we need to recognize that we're speaking Greek and they're speaking Phoenician or Latin or and start to learn how to change what we're saying into something that they can actually hear. Don't expect them to learn our language. They're not gonna.
I'm going to add on the same lines as Jenny and Beatrice. What are the skills you need to be successful professionally? I'll simplify it the way I see it. Know your stuff, know your audience, and know yourself. Now I'll elaborate. Know your stuff. If you are in IT, you're doing technology. Whatever field you choose, whether it's the great field of cybersecurity, testing, quality, know your subject, be a subject matter expert that nobody can question you on the fundamentals. You're getting education, that is something nobody can take away from you. So know your stuff. Second was know your audience. I would like to put it, and also so many qualities out there, all again under the umbrella of EQ. Know your technology, know your stuff, it's your IQ, right? It's your intelligent question. There's EQ, it's your emotional question. Who you're talking to. Are you talking Greek to them? Are they understanding what you're saying? When you're talking to them, you're talking, but when they are talking, are you listening? In IT, one of the major challenges I see with people is they know their stuff, they'll talk, but they're not listening to what other people are digesting, assimilating, what their questions are. Meet them where they are. It's the same whether you're talking to your team, to your juniors, to your managers. You have to change how you talk. And if you can learn how to teach your juniors what to do, if you can talk to your peers and come to their level, and then if you can translate all of that to your managers who understand less than you, you're golden. It's all soft skills, communication skills, but you have to use your emotional intelligence to see where the other person is and meet them there. Other qualities that I want to highlight under EQ, DEI, are you seeing that somebody else is not being heard? Are you aware that other people are feeling a certain way about not being incorporated or not being given a seat at the table? That's your EQ to rise to the occasion and be a leader. Even if you are an individual contributor, you're going to work with other individual contributors and you'll have to collaborate with them. As a manager, you're responsible for so many more people. Half of the time, you're really using your EQ versus IQ. The higher you rise in your professional career, the more is EQ versus IQ. A lot of times when I was working in DC, I would come back home and I'm like, am I a political honors student or am I a software engineering? I did not do anything with my software engineering all day today, all of last week, or all of last month. But that is what it takes to be successful at the next step. The last one, know yourself. I would really highlight this again. If you know you have what it takes to get the job, ignore who's not listening to you, ignore how you're being treated, negotiate. Oftentimes we are so full of self-doubt, we do not even apply to that job that we are fully qualified for. I had to talk myself out of it when I was applying to the C-level role, and I have to talk my other C-suite peers out of it when they're applying for the next C-level role. So like, you will never be out of self-doubt unless you knock it out. So know your worth and negotiate for it. Once you know you're ready for that job, they will see that you're ready for it and you will get that job. So know your stuff, know your audience, know yourself.
So much.
Do you want to add anything else?
Okay, we have our last set of questions for the evening, which is what are the different opportunities in the computing and its related field? And also expanding on that, what are the diverse pathways to be a professional in software engineering?
I'm really happy to talk about my favorite topic, something that I'm so passionate about, something that I've been doing since I was in that seat as a student in Seattle. Like I said, I pursued cybersecurity. I'm not sure how many of you here are aware of the journey of cybersecurity that you can take. Okay, so there are, like I said, hundreds of thousands of job openings right now in the industry for cybersecurity. Oftentimes, students think that it is the most nerdy, most geeky, most techy thing to do if you are going to be a pen tester or a certified hacker or just into a cybersecurity field, but it's not. And then I'll share all the different things you can do under the umbrella of cybersecurity. You can be really geeky and you can really break stuff, attack the applications, databases, attack the entire software stack that somebody is building. And you can do courses to train yourself with that. You use a certain set of tools, which again does not require you to be super nerdy as you're getting started. You can do vulnerability assessments. It's all bundled under application security or cloud infrastructure security if you're very interested into cloud. Modernization is the buzzword in the industry right now. Everybody's migrating from on-prem data centers to the cloud. There's also identity access management, which is going to teach you about the entire software architecture stack. It resides under cybersecurity, but you are really building, you're designing. It encompasses the entire SDLC from requirements, design, installation, configuration, testing. So if you want to build, not break or hack, you still have opportunity under the cybersecurity domain to do something. And it's going to tie into the overall how you're securing the enterprise. And how it's going to tie you is the last that I would say the least technical field in cybersecurity is governance, risk, and compliance. Again, there are so many jobs out there that pay you very well. And well, I should have said this in the beginning. Cybersecurity in the industry right now pays very well because there is a major shortage of talent in the industry. There are not still that many colleges that are offering bachelor's in cybersecurity, which is going to happen as we give it some years. And right now, the universities are giving a flavor of cybersecurity onesie, twosie courses. Like I took one and I latched onto it. But there are so many universities who are building out full-blown cybersecurity programs and degrees. So coming back to governance, risk, and compliance, it's not a job where you are coding or hacking. You are literally reading all the federal agencies write out these huge documentation or security guidelines that government agencies or financial sector, every agency, every enterprise is regulated, and they have to follow the security rule book by their applicable federal partner or other governing agency. And your job as a GRC, governance risk compliance analyst or an engineer, would be to translate those federal requirements to the IT team. Because you have an engineering degree, you're able to understand the federal mumbo jumbo into the technical mumbo jumbo for the IT staff to implement. So it's a very niche role. It really requires you to understand English on top of the degrees you're getting and to translate it for the real nerdy, geeky cybersecurity teams to do. So one bit I want to pass for all of you is cybersecurity is not the most geeky or nerdy, and you have to be sitting in the basement with the black hoodie and just constantly hacking and just like zeros and ones on the screens. That's not what cybersecurity is all about. There are many different streams you can pursue cybersecurity and build your way up to maybe be one of those people with the hoodie hacking systems. But you can start in the governance risk compliance, you can start with identity access management like I did, and build yourself into the career of cybersecurity. And there are many more that you heard about.
Yeah, I almost have a hard time with this because where software is everywhere now. I mean, it used to be you could, before me, right, you could point at the big machine in the basement and that's where the software was, but now it's in everything. It's in cars, it's in the assistants who sit on our phone and help us. It's literally everywhere. So the world in some ways coming out of this profession is a little bit like it's your oyster, right? What are you interested in, right? Yeah, I want to go work for one of the car companies doing software for the test drive systems they have. No, I want to do big data. I want to do voice recognition. I want to help rid Facebook of spam. I don't think that's a very helpful answer, but that's kind of where I feel like we are. There's just so much opportunity out there, well beyond what was, I mean, when I came out, it was sort of, you find a job, preferably with some sort of reasonably well-known large, back then it would have been Microsoft, Intel, and you're going to work in dev or test. And now you might start there, but also just the kinds of companies that you could look at. I'm always amazed when I go into a new company and we're training or coaching or doing assessment or doing some work, just to find out how much software is there, how complicated it is, how many variables there are, all the kinds of things they need to think about and deal with. So I guess I would start kind of thinking about what kinds of things really interest me, right? Do I want to be with one of the big tech companies? That kind of where I want to start my career. Am I more interested in, there's a whole group of companies out there that don't sell software or aren't driven by the software they make, right? I think of Amazon as being, even though it's a retail company, it's very much a tech company. And it has been from its very beginnings and instantiations. There's tons of companies out there doing really interesting stuff where what they sell is nowhere close to the technology. And those can be really interesting places and positions to start, right? So not everybody's gonna get the foot in the door at Google or Facebook or Meta or all of the big high names, but that doesn't mean that you can't start somewhere and then let's see where your happy accidents take you. Or maybe try again.
Yeah. Don't stop trying. Try again. Yes, that is true. Yeah, most of my experience comes from big tech firms. But even then, a lot of the teams and projects that I worked on were not necessarily things I had studied in school or that I had full knowledge of. I knew I was interested. I'm like, well, I did some computer vision stuff in my graduate degree, but there's this speech and language understanding team that's also doing ML. They're also using statistical models. And I know the foundations on this type of application. I think I can pick it up there as well. And just follow that interest and show it in your applications. One of the pieces of advice that I give students that are writing their resumes for the first time and are trying to land that first internship or first full-time job is that you can reach out a little bit and be like, look, I didn't do ML in school, but I think it's pretty cool. I want to learn more. And I would really like to work in a team within your company where I could get some exposure and learn. I love hiring those people. Like back when I was a hiring manager, I loved seeing that in a resume because I had a blend of backend and machine learning teams. And I loved having backend engineers that wanted to learn. And that was the best hire because they could do everything. And they were passionate about learning. And so add that to your objective, to your cover letter. If you are applying to a company and they're doing stuff that you're like, oh, I don't know about bioinformatics, but I've always been interested, and they're doing it, and then put out that interest that yes, I do front end and back end or whatever your expertise is, but I'm also looking for the possibility to work near these teams so that I can learn more about that tech. That passion comes across, and I think hiring managers, if they're big smart, they want to hire that passion because you're going to be committed, you're going to be happy, and you're going to be engaged, and you're going to grow and learn. So don't limit yourself to what you know, what you learned from school. Definitely pursue new areas. In my life, I did some robotics, some bioinformatics, search, information retrieval, computer vision, speech, natural language, a little bit of everything. And I didn't know this, and I learned them, and I really enjoyed it. And again, I think learning is the key, the key word. You never will stop learning, so you might as well have fun with it and do something that you're passionate about. There's also a different dimension of not just the projects that you might, or the fields that you might support with your software or your technical abilities, but also whether you might be a software engineer or a product manager or a tester or the many different data science, designing UX, and so on and so forth. There's so many different roles in core tech now that you can experiment with as well. And so that's I do think software engineering tends to be the more popular, but there's others. There's so many other roles out there. They're maybe not as defined, but they're important, and everybody has their own flavor to them anyway. So you can always give it a try and learn from senior people in that space, and maybe that is where you find your niche. I switched between software engineering test and program management, and then software engineering, and then actual management. So I have product project management doesn't mean you have authority or manage people. You don't have to influence a lot without authority, which can be fun. But as a manager, now you're responsible for other human beings and their growth, and you should support them to become better people every day. And I enjoy that. For me, that became the people puzzle, not the tech puzzle anymore. I needed to figure out this person, what drives them, what's their motivator, what do they want to learn, how can I help them? And that is a really beautiful part of the puzzle too, like, if you're into that. But so there's also a very, of course, as a manager, there's also very people type skills that you could apply later on. So yeah.
you all so much for taking the time to be here with us today. Sure, we all learned a lot from valuable experiences. It's so fun.
Yeah, we do. By the way, there's actually 77 other people on Zoom, so there.
Oh,
a lot of people didn't bring it. Yeah, this is by far our biggest in terms of the actual people that are viewing it. And if are you open to some questions? We have a few minutes. Because I think you raised a lot of great things. So I'll let the students in. We'll try to monitor chat also for people that are on Zoom to see if we have any questions. So feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah, so Mr. Diaz, I have a question for you. What role would you say facilitated the most growth for you and why?
All right, great question. What role facilitated the most growth for me and why? Oh, I'm gonna pick two. I can't pick one. I think my first one would be just my entry level job. Just because going from university to industry is a whole new ball and you have to learn so much that first year. And I was fortunate to be joining a team that was well established within Microsoft, that had a good buddy onboarding system. I got a great buddy to help me onboard. This is a person that I count in my 5 closest friends still, 20 years later. So that propelled a ton of growth just because it was so different. And I had the support and I was in a place that felt a lot like university again. And then the second, I actually think Facebook, my role in Facebook pushed me a lot. It's a company that if you think people move fast in tech, I think that's the place that has moved the fastest for me. And I really appreciated learning just a new culture in terms of constantly shipping, constantly testing things. Just, you could think of your feature in the morning and be dialing the knob to 1% of the population in the evening. It's incredible. The power. You can change a pixel in the mobile app and have multiple billion people look at that pixel that you put there. If it gets through code review and testing. But, it's amazing. So I really enjoyed the speed and the impact, the level of impact. And you have to make very hard decisions with very little information a lot of the time. And that really grew my instincts and my own confidence in my experience and my ability to lead teams through very difficult choices. But I am a bias for action kind of person, so I kind of like making decisions with lots of attitude. Practice makes perfect. And yes, I've made lots of mistakes, but I was always a bit delusional about like, well, if we make a mistake, we can fix it tomorrow. So it's very expensive. I wouldn't want to be writing software for airplanes. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take one more question from the audience, and we're going to give a few people that are in chat the opportunity. There's probably a lot more questions than we have time for, but maybe afterwards you can ask them more. But let's take one more. Go ahead.
Oh, so because we're doing a massive upgrade for companies, do you think because I'm a senior right now, after do you think that we're more focused on keep saving the job opportunity or looking for academic opportunities like the or graduate level?
I would say keep looking. There are still so many job opportunities. I'm not sure which particular domain you're looking at, or if you're open to finding a IT job, there's still going to be jobs. And one thing I want to call out, especially in chaos, there's opportunity, right? There are all these big giants that are laying off people. But if you look at the government, if you look at the public sector, they're not laying off, they're going constant. I come from a public-private entity. We are still hiring, and we're actually looking at this as an opportunity of hiring new talent that we were not able to hire before because of the pay gap. So I would absolutely say keep looking, and there definitely should be an opportunity somewhere. Don't just focus on the big Facebook and Microsoft and Boeing, because we are in Seattle. There are so many companies, right? If I was able to find a job being in Manhattan in the middle of financial crisis in 2007, you'll be able to find a job. Just expand your horizon of the IT job that you're looking at, and also the companies or government agencies that you start looking at. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Before she says it, I had an idea, because I don't think we're gonna get all to all the questions at the time, but can you post your question in the chat? Perhaps at the end of this, we'll keep the chat transcript, and then maybe we'll provide the speakers the ability to maybe answer them offline. So if we want to post something in chat, we'll try to get it answered in another way. But go ahead and watch you go to chat.
I have one other question from the Zoom chat. So somebody asked, how do you know when to stay with a company or to leave? And also, especially if you like the company you are currently with, when do you decide to move on? Fair game for anyone.
Do you want to take?
I could do a little bit, or
Oh, come on, then I'll take it.
you both moved around a little more than me.
Yeah, I always felt that the best move for me was to have, I wanted my moves to happen, not because I was unhappy with my current team, but because I was very attracted to the new opportunity, and that I would actually feel sad leaving my previous team or company. I feel that those are the most ideal changes, when you're just pursuing your passion and you're making a change for the better, and it's a better time, place, and set of people for you, and you're leaving your previous job on a high note. I think those are the best. So I personally got a lot from not waiting for things to get sour until I looked for my next opportunity. And whenever they did get sour, because that did happen a couple of times in my career, I immediately course corrected. I never sat back and waited. I kept my interviewing skills sharp, and I was not afraid of going out there and getting rejected and trying something else. And I'm glad I did, because again, life is too short. Don't stick around if things are not working for you. That's my short answer.
I think those are incredibly wise words.
I'll give you my cheat sheet of how I make the decisions, whether it's my personal lives, whether it's my career. It's the very basic concept of positive and negative. If you are in a situation where it's negative, you have to leave and move to a positive. If you are in a job that is positive and you see something that is plus, you will obviously gravitate towards that. Oftentimes we again create a cloud in our brain of this and that and too many ifs and buts. If you put all the ifs and buts in a bucket and calculate the positive, negative, the sum total, it'll really simplify your decision making at time and always gravitate towards more positive.
This will probably be our last question, and then we'll end it.
So another question we got is, if you could change one or more things about the way people in industry treated you on like the first meeting, what would you change? And then some examples included were like, if there's a common question they asked that you didn't want them to ask, or just comments on you that you didn't want.
So I don't think you can change people, but given and now that I've had years of experience dealing with people, when I sat in a room and somebody made a comment that I did not like, earlier I would be baffled or shocked or silent. What I have done instead is change myself to that first wrong comment that comes at me, is I give them something. And I can share an example with my recent being at the C-level role, and I'm dealing with another C-level executive in cybersecurity, a man, and he sees me on the screen the first time, and of course his perception is wrong. And I am their client. Instead, he turns around and asks me if I can give them all of this documentation and if I can do this, this. And I just paused, and I know I can't change this person, but I can change how I react to this person. So he doesn't do this again and specifically not to me. So I took a pause and I turned the table around saying, I don't think this is what I have to give to you. This is what you have to give to me. Please go read the contract. So hopefully that helps. Yeah. You want to add?
Thank you. I have a small one. This is a pet peeve of mine because I am not a native English language speaker. And there was a time when people in my industry would crack a joke at my accent, which is not that bad. But anyhow, when people ever, repeated, oh, it's so cute when you say this or that, I'd be like, yeah, how many languages do you speak? Come on, an accent is a sign of courage. Period.
I guess the final thing I would add is just those things are going to happen through the course of your career and finding ways that you can kind of effectively cope with them, right? So just start looking for patterns and, find humorous ways or diffusing ways or other ways or sometimes just blunt ways. And I think everybody's a little bit different. And so what comes at you and how you're comfortable handling it will be different person to person.